So, you liked what happens if Trump wins. A lot of you ask, what happens if Biden wins? Let's get after it. I'm Chris Cuomo. Welcome to the Chris Cuomo Project. Thank you for subscribing and following. So let's look at it. We got to break it down. Biden wins. Okay, let's start with the first question. What is the reaction to the win? Does Trump go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and say that it was rigged? Because if that goes that way, we got one very definite near-term future, which is unrest, okay? Does he accept it? I find that hard to believe, to be honest. Why? Because he's a man of low character, and he does what's good for him. And he feeds into inhibitions, into concerns and paranoias about how the system is flawed and all this. And we see this with politicians on a regular basis, but like with many other norms, it's just more exaggerated when it comes to Trump. They question the system when the outcome isn't what they like. It can be a shitty election. If they win, they don't say anything, right? We've seen this mildly with Democrats in 2018, of course, in the year 2000. And we saw it most notably with Trump when he didn't like that he lost. And he lost. He lost any way you look at it. We've never had an election scrutinized more. He lost, he lost, he lost. And the idea about affidavits that showed that people saw things and that there were tapes, it's all bullshit. And we know it's bullshit because when people had to be willing to put up or shut up and pay a price, like their law licenses, if they couldn't demonstrate what smack they'd been talking, they backed off in court. True the vote. Wound up saying through counsel, we do not have the affidavits and the proof and the videos that we've allowed or has been said or ascribed to us all this time. So he wins, we get past the drama. Okay, now let's start talking about what happens if Biden wins, all right? So Biden wins, we get past the drama. We have the personal and we have the policy. Let's do the personal first because it's easier. You have a catastrophic concern, right? Which is Biden is not able to do it. That goes a couple of different ways. And God forbid, I don't want any of this to happen. In my experience, President Biden is a generous man. He's been a good man to my family. Now, has it been complicated by politics and stuff with my brother? Yes, yes, yes. But that doesn't change my baseline assessment. So, he's sick. Okay, someone his age could be sick. He has a medical catastrophe. He winds up being unable to do the job. Now we got a 25th Amendment situation, okay? And that is if he resists or he's not able to get in front of it. And then we're going to have a power shuffle. And it's going to be messy because Kamala Harris has no juice, no constituency, and there's not a lot of confidence in her, in and among the administration. Now, if there's a straight up God forbid with the president and he is gone, then Harris takes over. And that is a huge question mark for Biden. It's why I don't understand how the party could ignore how weak the VP is seen by Democrats. You don't even see any polling that they put out in your face about how people feel about Democrats. While I'm doing this, Greg, Google polls on Harris. Let's see what we can even find. So, if Harris comes in, you're going to have a lot of political chaos. Now, a lot of it will be fugazi. It'll be fake. Why? Because it's not like she's got to pilot the space shuttle or something like that, right? There's going to be a whole team of people around her. And, it's not like she has some radical agenda that we know about. Oh, yes, we do. She's a radical lefty. That's hyperbole. It's hype. And it's what you play to in this bipartisan battle to the bottom of poison politics with these two parties. Greg tells me that at this point in the polling, Harris is less popular than like every VP we've had, even Cheney. Okay. So she's in the crapper. Okay. And that's good reason, bad reason, no reason. It is how it is. And it's going to have a crisis of confidence, and the Republicans are going to go nuts on her, and they're going to try and do everything they can to create instability. That's what's going to happen. Now, that's on the personal side. I think the more likely concern is a power shuffle, where there's a move where they don't want it to be Harris. And there's something happening with the president. Now, If you look at the language of the 25th Amendment, there's not that much wiggle room, but that doesn't mean people won't talk about it and the media won't pump it up and that there won't be a lot more agita in our lives for days, weeks, or months. Now, that's the personal, that's the easier analysis. On the policy, and no, I don't know why any of you asked this, but no, in no circumstance whatsoever is it possible that if Biden can't be president, the person who is running against him gets to be president. No, it's not how the system works. It never has worked that way. It doesn't work that way. Stop asking, okay? Now, another thing I get asked is, well, what if it's contested? Do we get the Civil War movie that we're watching on TV, that we're watching in the theaters right now? No. One, I don't ever see Texas and California teaming up. And, I may do an episode on that movie, now that I think about it, because I really want to talk to the filmmakers about why the fuck did you think this was a good idea? Because I saw it hoping that there'd be some sense of redemption about how stupid the idea of this type of violent division is. But there isn't. That there'd be some mockery of it. There isn't. I see no overriding virtue in it. It seems almost like a straight opportunistic play on division. So is that why you did it? I want to talk about that. Now, assuming it doesn't break out in civil war, now you get into how the administration would function. That takes you to policy. The key question there is one that won't jump to mind. What is the key consideration and what happens if Biden wins in terms of policy? Who else wins? What is the composition of Congress? Because if it is not a blue wave, then he's screwed by the numbers. And you get inaction. You get opposition as a legitimate position. You get, we're just going to stop him. And you will get nothing. And that's the truth. And you're going to have exactly what you have right now, which is just a lot of talk about why the other side is worse and debt ceiling brinkmanship. Now, if there are numbers and if there are things that are done, okay, if it can be done, if he wins, eking it out with immigration biting him in the hiney every step of the way, the southern border, you will see executive action, I believe, before the election, which means that there won't be as much space left after it for unilateral action. It'll be about getting Congress to do something. But if that issue stays the dominant issue domestically, and it really plays out in this election, I can't believe Biden won't do something unilaterally before the election. I can't believe he's waited this long. I think that they're trying to hold it as like an October surprise, which is usually a bad thing. But maybe they're waiting because they want it to be as close to the election as possible to get as much credit for doing it. But they are then making an assumption or calculated risk that people will value doing something more than they'll value the fact that you waited so long to do anything. I don't know. I can argue it either way. Arguing it this way, you said you wanted me to do something, I do something, and now you're saying I didn't do it soon enough. I can't win. That will definitely back the media off from scrutiny of it. But I don't know how it works with people, let alone the persuadables, who I think are more savvy about this. So if it's about domestic agenda and it's immigration, then I think you've had executive action before, and it becomes on what he can do with Congress after. And I think the answer is nothing. Because you're not going to get a standalone policy because they keep talking about comprehensive, but that's really only because each side has to get a win for themselves. So you don't get the dreamers all by themselves, even though everybody agrees that you should be taking care of the dreamers, and they've been held in a legal limbo, and it's disgusting. Because, well, if we're giving you the dreamers, you got to give us cutting off chain migration and stopping catch and release and this other stuff that the right's going to demand that the left won't give them. So instead of acting on a point of common agreement, they'll do nothing because it's all about advantage. And it's not about advancing your common concerns that all of us share. It's their party concerns. So if they can't win and take it back as a win and somehow sotto voce, under their voice say, and we screwed the other side, we beat them, we stopped them, it's not going to happen. Now, if it's tax policy, That is likely because Congress likes tax policy, especially if they can call it a tax cut. And it'll be a tax cut for you because it'll be a tax increase on the 1% of the 1%. Now, my problem with that is I can't believe that will work in a way that they don't find a way to get around it, because they always do, because they have the lobbyists, they have the clout with Congress and all the contributions, and I just have never seen them take a loss. When? I mean, you pointed out to me. How do they take a loss? Support for the Chris Cuomo Project comes from Cozy Earth. Let me tell you, bedding matters. And this isn't just me telling you this. In a recent survey, 7 out of 10 parents said that they get an average of 3 hours of sleep a night in the baby's first year. Hello, Greg. Now, mommies need quality sleep, and bedding will matter. There are other variables, but here's one that you can control, okay? When we made the switch to Cozy Earth, I noticed the difference. I did not know that fabric or textiles could really be temperature sensitive, meaning if it's cold, they keep you warm. If it's warm, they can kind of cool you off. I did not know that. I know it now because I have Cozy Earth, okay? So, this Mother's Day, why don't you treat the mamas in your life to the luxury they deserve with Cozy Earth bedding and sleepwear, and prioritize her self-care and sleep health? Doesn't she deserve it? Don't forget, use my promo code Chris at checkout and you get 35% off at CozyEarth.com, okay? When you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select my show in the drop-down, and that will make me very happy. Support for the Chris Cuomo Project comes from AG1. If you're a longtime listener, you know I have had AG1 as part of my game for many years. When I started drinking AG1, it automatically simplified my life. All the different pills and the mixes and what I take when and how and with what was gone. One and done. A scoop in a glass of warm water for me. You can put it in anything you want. I like the warm water. I like the taste. Do it in the morning, and that's it. AG1 is a foundational nutritional supplement that supports your body's universal needs: gut optimization, stress management, immune support. Now, since 2010, AG1 has led the future of foundational nutrition, continuously refining their formula to create smarter, better ways within their formula to elevate baseline health. So, you want to take ownership of your health? Of course you do. Start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/CCP, Chris Cuomo Project. That's drinkag1.com/CCP. Check it out. It's getting warmer. You want to be fit. You don't want to be inside. You know what that's a recipe for? Fueling up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Factor, meet your wellness goals in time for summer. You need the right fuel. You can't out-train your diet. You need chef-crafted meals, calorie smart, protein plus, keto, whatever your vibe is. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals, key to keeping the nutritional value, are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So, you're busy? Of course you are. You want to get out, but you want to enjoy something that's giving you what you need, including great taste. That's what Factor's all about. Head to factormeals.com/Cuomo50. Use code Cuomo50. Why is it 50? Because you get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off the next month. That's code Cuomo50 at factormeals.com/Cuomo50, and you get 50% off your first box, plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Support for the Chris Cuomo Project comes from ZBiotics. Let me tell you something. We all know that there can be a tendency to overdo it when you drink, right? Hello, ZBiotics. How does it work? Alcohol screws you up because it gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. It's this byproduct, not just dehydration as we've always thought, that's to blame for the rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break down the byproduct. You see? You just got to remember to take ZBiotics as your first drink of the night. And of course, don't be a sponge. If you're responsible about your drinking and you start with ZBiotics, you will feel fine the next day. How do I know? Because I've done it. I'm not just saying I've drunk too much. That's happened dozens and dozens of times, which is why I drink very, very rarely. But when I do, I try to think before I drink. And that's where ZBiotics comes in. Go to ZBiotics.com/Chris and you'll get 15% off your first order. Use Chris at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you don't like it, if it didn't work, if it's not what I said, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. Remember, head to ZBiotics.com/Chris, use the code Chris at checkout, you get 15% off. And I want to thank ZBiotics for sponsoring this episode and future good times. So, foreign policy is where it gets really interesting. I do not say this as a negative, but there is a better chance of seeing American military action under a Biden presidency than a Trump one. As unstable and kooky and irrational and rash as Trump can be, he is very, very opposed to military action. It's interesting. I've never seen another guy who talks more and walks less. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing when it comes to military action. I don't believe that the president really should be able to take any of the military action that we've seen in the last 20 years without Congress's approval. They just keep letting him get away with shit because Congress doesn't want to own the responsibility for any action. But despite this incongruity between how Trump talks and how Trump acts, when it comes to military, he just doesn't want to see things happen. Like, I think there's a better chance that you see American military in the region doing things to help Israel than under Biden than there is under Trump. And I don't think that's because one of them cares about Israel more than the other. It's about how they choose to use power. And again, I get that it doesn't make sense on one level that Trump seems to want to flex and be strong and harsh all the time, but not with the main way to do it. Yeah, I mean, that's what we saw the first time. I mean, I think there's a better chance that he uses the military on the border than he does the Middle East. And I think there's no chance that Biden uses military on the border, and a good chance that he scales it up in the Middle East. So, Ukraine. If Biden wins, you're going to get a more verbally muscular posture on that than you will under Trump. Remember, Trump thinks Ukraine screwed him in the form of Zelensky. So that's all that matters to him. And a big part of the resistance on the right to funding Ukraine, while it's taken the form of a lot of other ideologies and arguments, it's really, at the end of the day, that Trump doesn't like them because of that Zelensky phone call. So they decided to screw the entire country and all its people. I mean, that really is a factor of what's going on right now. So with Biden, you'll get more muscular talk. You'll get more reverb with Russia. For whatever reason, Trump believes in being nice to bad guys. He thinks that gets us farther. I think that remains to be seen. With the Middle East, look, I see this as a 60-40 yes to no of this now goes from the proxies to Iran proper. If Israel has its way, it will keep rooting out Hamas. It will not relinquish the control it has over Gaza, which I think is a mistake for Israel and for the people who are suffering there in Gaza. And they want to go after Iran directly. Now, Iran doesn't fight its own fights. It uses its proxies. You can't tell me the last time that Iran came out with massive force of its own. It does little stupid things like it takes sailors hostage and stuff like that. But all-out combat, they don't do it. They're not Israel. Israel knows that. Israel, I think, feels that it is losing the messaging battle of fighting the proxies, and it has a better chance against Iran itself. As we just saw here in America, it's hard to celebrate Iran attacking Israel. They're trying, But it's different than being pro-Palestine. It's different. You know Iran is the head of the snake. You know they do nothing but cause chaos. And they are at best sectarian warriors looking to destroy Muslims that they don't agree with on the basis of a completely non-consequential distinction between Shia and Sunni. So it's hard for Americans to be pro-Iran. And that's even before. That's with you projecting pro-Palestinian suffering onto Iran as if they were equally aggrieved and they're freedom fighters for Palestine. If they were, they would accept them in. They would put a lot of money in there and build infrastructure, and they would have real elections. But they don't even have that in Iran, because Iran is a corrupt regime of theocracy. They are harming their own people. Remember Amini, A-M-I-N-I, remember the woman who was killed by the regime, and all the protests and all the Persian and Iranian and expats who came forward here in America, and they were getting bloody in the streets there, fighting against the regime for the woman's cause, for suffrage in general, freedom in the main. Remember all that? That's Iran. So I see that as a catalyst factor here, and I don't think Iran is going to be as sympathetic to the American suffrage movement as Palestine is. So it's to Israel's advantage to shift. It's also to America's advantage to shift. And it's also to America's advantage to let Israel fight Iran for it. So I think that there's a good chance that the more that shift happens, the more you're going to see Biden being nicer and nicer to Israel and have less and less exception to their actions, as long as they're directed at Iran. Now, the question becomes, can Biden control the table well enough to not have this become about alliances? Does China get involved? Does Russia get involved? Does Turkey get involved? That's what you got to worry about, that people start taking sides. Now, luckily, Iran has lots of bad blood with lots of different people. Not Russia so much, not China so much, but does Russia have the bandwidth to spread itself into an Iranian conflict? No. They're totally strapped. We were totally wrong about what their military capabilities are, unless they want to go full nuclear. And they are up to their necks with Ukraine. China may use it as an opportunity to go into Taiwan, but I got to tell you, everybody in American power keeps saying, if they go into Taiwan, we're going to defend Taiwan. I don't know where the will for that is in America. I've never heard Americans say they want to fight to defend Taiwan. Never. Well, but they're an ally, they're a friend. Do people even know that? I think there's a lot of work to do with the American public to get them in line with going after China, of all people. I mean, look, China's killing us with fentanyl. Biden is doing nothing. Congress is doing nothing. We're doing nothing. Well, China's now working with us to try to help and stop. No, they're not. They just put out a report in Congress. Biden has said nothing about it. Why aren't we going after China about fentanyl when they're killing us? When you could make the argument that it is almost an act of terror, what they're doing. Not really, because it's not so much about a political agenda, but it is about trying to destroy our culture. He says nothing. Why? They're afraid of China. He doesn't have the leverage. You'd have to give you guys pain that you don't want. Now, I believe that ultimately it would be better for us if we were to get off our addiction to cheap goods from China and make it here again and pay different prices and have different needs and wants and have different rules for ourselves about what we accumulate. It would be great to be able to tell China to fuck off and release all those Muslims to start with. The Uyghurs, for you who care so much about Muslim suffrage. But there's no will for that. So Biden likely has to play it close to the vest. The more it becomes about Iran, the more he'll embrace Israel. The more it becomes regional, the more his strength is going to be tested, and I think the bigger problems we have. And I don't think that would be different under Trump. The idea that Trump can make alliances and keep people quiet, or that they fear him because they think he's crazy, I think that is a little bit of an old reckoning. I think he'd just be over his head and very reliant on people around him, and I don't know that he'll have the best around him. So what happens if Biden wins? It depends who else wins, okay? It depends if you're looking at the personal or the policy. It depends if this is an election that winds up turning on a single domestic issue or on something that happens abroad. If it is about the border, I can't believe he won't have acted on the border before the election. But if he does, then all that's left is for Congress to do something, because there's not that much you can do unilaterally as the executive. He could do more than he has done. And if he gets challenged in court, at least he'd be trying to do something. I really don't understand why, other than the explanation I gave you, is that they're holding out so that it's closer to the election, so there's more bang for the buck. But again, that's assuming that he won't pay a price for the delay and for basically creating the situation in the eyes of many voters. Enough voters that even Democrats rate the southern border as a high priority issue for them now, way high up on the list, if not the highest. Now, if it is about a specific mandate, it still comes down to what the numbers are in Congress to deliver that mandate. If it is about the grocery store and gas prices, there just isn't the ability to control those things the way politicians would make you think there is. The gas market is a world market, okay? OPEC has the largest share, then us. But they have outsized leverage because of all the people who buy from them. That's why the United States is pumping more oil than it ever has before, to try to affect the world market. But we don't control our own gas prices. And that's something that people need to start telling you, because they're just allowing us to live this lie. With grocery prices, not only do you have environmental considerations, and I don't mean this in like some kind of political way, whether you're it's just a reality, okay? You can feel any way you want about it. But you also have companies that are gouging profits. And that's something that has to be contended with. But we say, oh, capitalism. And it seems more and more true to me as a capitalist that capitalism only works for the people who want it to work for them and have the power in that moment. Capitalism doesn't work when the companies fuck up and the banks go belly up and we have to bail them out. Now it's not capitalism anymore. Now it's about shared sacrifice. Oh, okay. But that's never true on the profit side. So you even have Elon Musk asking for them to give them a record payout of like $56 billion while saying there's going to be 10% reduction in the labor force. Really? But he's for the little guy, right? You see what I'm saying? So if Biden wins, it's going to depend on who else wins, whether we're talking about his health or his policy. If it's policy, it's what mandate it was. I've gone through what's going to happen on the foreign side. And I think that that is going to be the bigger inflection point in terms of policy. I think we're going to have more problems abroad than at home. That's good in one way, but it's going to frustrate people in another way, because they'll believe that America is once again spending its time and its energy and its money abroad instead of at home. And that will be a challenge also. And if Biden wins, it's almost automatically going to set up for what the next election is. I mean, it's almost going to be immediate, because not only will he be in the second term, but there'll be a desperation for a different leader, the way I see it right now. Thank you very much for subscribing and following. Appreciate you here at the Chris Cuomo Project. If you don't want the ads, check out the Substack, and you'll also get all of the exclusive and personal journey of mine with long COVID. My doctor, her analyses, my blood work, why we're attacking it the way we are, what she thinks long COVID is, how it stacks up against the research, nutrition, movement, yada, 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 and News Nation, 8p, 11p, every weekday night. I'll see you there. Thank you for the growth. Slow, but good, and I'll take it. And remember, I think the remedy is your righteousness. Leave the parties. Be a free agent. Wear your independence. Get the swag. We use the money to give it away. We gave 10 grand to Inara to help the kids who are being affected by the war in Gaza. That's where the money went. It's a just cause. So thank you very much. If we stick together, everything gets easier. So let's get after it.